Everyone has their own journey in life, and my journey began from as far as possible I could remember is I was born into a family where there's a lot of chaos. Even in my childhood, I would know that there was chaos. It was that chaotic. And even though my spiritual journey began, started getting into meditation and spirituality in 2018. But way before that, even though when I didn't know at that time, my spiritual journey had already begun in my childhood when I was very young. Those were the days where I would see that my parents were not that happy with each other. There used to be a lot of fights. At that age, you wouldn't know how to process such emotions, and that becomes your norm. That became my norm. And I'm sure there are a lot of families out there where having such environment is a norm, and they're not aware of that. And that impacts a lot on the child's psyche. The parents may not be aware of it because they belong to a different generation where science was not even existing at that time about psychology. It was there, but it was not as much as it is now. So my journey began in childhood, where I was forced to believe in God because I belong to a Hindu family. And in India, if you don't follow the rituals of the house, you're seen as an outcast. But in a way, I was blessed where my parents were not forcing anybody to follow that. As a child, I would just be part of those ceremonies, but it never really became a part of me. And when you pray to a god, and the rituals here were that you would get your wish fulfilled if you pray to God with your heart. And there were a lot of really trivial rituals like that. And in India, we have a number of gods. So there are a lot of festivals too. Today, I have come to a point where these things don't matter. Actually, this has been happening for a lot of years. But since I'm talking about the whole journey, this whole idea of worshipping something that is greater than yourself, it puts you as an inferior. And I never really got the whole aspect of that. In my childhood, I used to hear that God is one. And I used to wonder if God is one, then why are there so many idols that people are worshipping in different number of ways, different number of prayers, different ceremonies, different places, different temples, and different religions. Christians have their own church. Muslims have their own mosques. Hindus have their own temples. It really didn't have it didn't make any sense to me at that time also. So over time, I just knew that it was not the way. It was not the way for me. But since my childhood was very traumatic, as I realized it in adulthood, and when a person goes through that phase, right, and you get into a relationship, all the problems come out. I got into my first relationship, and there were problems I didn't even know there were problems at that time. That is a norm to a person who is not conscious enough. And who do you learn from how to be in a relationship? Your parents. Your parents have become a mirror to you, and you act exactly like them in your adult relationships. The words may be different, but the behaviors are more or less the same of how you approach a partner in a relationship. So, over the course of a decade, more than a decade, it did hit me last year that I did have traumas from childhood. It took me 33 years to realize that. And I've seen people go through lives and not even recognize that they have traumas. Forget about working on them. And I'm bringing in traumas here because when you have such trauma, right, and it's a painful experience which people unconsciously run away from. And that's why we have anxiety, we have all these mental health disorders now. And it's an escape where we end up having coping mechanisms to escape from feeling that pain or feeling that trauma. Now we have a lot of science, but when you have such traumas, right, it's if you look at the positive side of it, it's like a crack. It's like a crack that opens up for you to peep into your soul. If those traumas, if those hurt, if those pain were not there, I don't think it is really possible to have a deep experience of life because then it would be very superficial. So if you ask me, having gone through such phases, I think it's very important to have suffering. And in a world that we have today, There's no escape from it. It's important to have suffering in the sense where everything you have all your basics covered, and yet if there is suffering, and there will be suffering, those sufferings are very important for growth and to get you started on your spiritual journey. On a journey where you end up questioning what this life is all about. Because you come to such a point of asking that question only when you hit a rock bottom. Not once, not twice, but a lot of times in your life. And it has happened to me. And whenever I hit such rock bottoms, there were months where I wouldn't get out of those phases of pain and uncomfortable feelings and everything. But period, those period of painful suffering and depression, if a person has a growth mindset, right, and if they have that innate quality of reflection, if innate quality of observing what is happening to their own mind, of how they are being treated by people, of how they are treating other people, when all these are taken into consideration, comes revelations. Not just one, but there comes a lot of revelations. And if a person is open enough, he would see where his problem lies, and he would also see where other people's problem lie, and he would also peep into why there are such problems in the first place. And there are problems such as those in the first place because this is how the society is now. Where everybody is projecting their own emotions, their own beliefs, their own experiences onto other people, especially in a family. Especially after a child is born into the family. The child has no control over what goes into his mind. And that's the sad part of upbringing these days, where parents just project themselves onto their children. Very few parents know how to bring up a child consciously, where he's not made to be like replica or another version of doing things which the parents could not do in their own life, of not having those hurts which the parents had. A new child is just supposed to be free, but that is rarely so now. And hence, the trauma that we face and the recognition of it in adulthood is very important to continue going deeper into spirituality. And how I started my spiritual journey was first I was introduced to Brahma Kumaris. And at that point, when I was very hesitant for the first year to even go to that meditation center, and I went. And the first time I went, the first day I remember where there was a meditation, which you do with your eyes open. Because it was a new experience, I really bought into it. And I followed that for a few months, or maybe, yeah, I did follow that for a few months. And I even introduced my parents to that because it impacted my life in a deep way at that time. I didn't know about meditation before that, and I'm thankful to one of my exes for introducing me for that. And the only reason I got into spirituality was that. And another reason why I got into the next phase of my spiritual journey was a breakup with that person, and that was to escape from the pain. And I had no idea at that time that I would go deep into spirituality. It was more about not facing that pain at that time. I started following Sadhguru. I did the inner engineering course, and in just a week of doing that course, I had an experience of out of body experience where I could not even feel my body. There's no denying the fact that meditation does help. It does help people to go deep into their own life and having those experiences which they would not have had otherwise. Just a week after doing inner engineering, where I had this out of body experience, it literally blew me. And I've never been the same person after that, because what that made me realize is that there is a space between the body and what is lying outside here. And that space was never experiential for me. It's not experiential for a lot of people, most of them, because nobody talks about this space that is in between us, that is all over. That is most of the space that we see. And because I was in that pain of of breakup, I could go deep into meditation, and inner engineering was just the right ingredient, if you could say that, at that time, where it just allowed me to go to that depth where I could see that I could experientially feel that there is something beyond what we ordinarily live. There's something more to life. That's when I started really decided to go deep. And I followed Sadhguru for the next 7 years. Did not practice in a ring for a long time. I could not do it regularly. There was a stretch where I did it for 100 days straight, and those were really beautiful days where I lived very consciously in those days, and that was at home. And after that, I did go to the ashram, which Isha has in Coimbatore. I did the advanced programs over there, which is Shunya and Bhavaspandana, those two. And the stay there for 2 weeks, along with these back-to-back programs, took me to a level where I can't put it into words. It's really hard to explain. All these realizations that people in spirituality have, they may talk about it, but it can never really describe what actually they realize in those moments. Words don't come close to it. But if I have to try and put it into words, those days it allowed me to slow down. It allowed me to slow down even more, where I could feel that there is emptiness in life. Not in a sad way, but in a beautiful way as the foundation of it. That is what Shunya meditation was all about. Bhavaspandana was majestic when it comes to experiencing the senses. It was a very sensory meditation which just opens you up like nothing. It was a wonderful experience. And it allowed me to remove a lot of my blocks because the program is designed in a such a way that it allows all the participants to go beyond a certain block that they have in that phase of their life. And I took my parents to Isha Center on the New Year's Eve of 2024. So this was the New Year of um, 2024, where it was a very spontaneous decision to go there, and I took my parents very instantly. It was a on the spot decision. But the experience that I had there was something I was not expecting. And this Isha followers would not, this would not go well with the Isha followers. Where I did see in the center that the same concept, I was just on my own in the center, just walking about. And I saw volunteers talking where they were complaining about a lot of stuff that is in the ashram. And I think this is a very normal thing these days in the ashrams. And it got me into it got me into a spot where I could relate that to what is happening, how people are treated in the companies. It's the same thing there when there's a hierarchy. Whenever there's a hierarchy, there has to be superiority and inferiority. So in Isha, there are long-term volunteers and there are new volunteers, and volunteers are amazing there. No doubt, question about that. But I've seen volunteers being treated very badly. They've been made to work. They've not been allowed to attend what they want to attend because there's work. And the seniors really treated them badly, at least on the couple of occasions that I witnessed myself. This was one of the things. And the other aspect was on the New Year's Eve when there was this talk with Sadhguru, when he gave a satsang on the New Year's Eve of 2024. At that time, the Ram Ayodhya was being built, and it was going to be revealed in a few weeks' time. And the New Year's Eve, when it came to asking the questions and answers, people were asking a lot of things. But the mic that was given was to one of the volunteers who was sitting right beside me. And I could see in his WhatsApp group that he was sent some questions to ask. And that literally blew me, where some of the things that are being asked has been staged. That took the whole respect out of the center for me. I don't know if Sadhguru is aware of it, but I think in a lot of ways he is. But what I saw really took all the respect out of the center for me, because when something is staged for popularity, for marketing, it just isn't natural, where you're just talking about things so that you can get eyes on you. That didn't go well. And the other thing that didn't go well with me was because I have been into the depth of seeing things clearly, I could see in a lot of ways that the center was being restricted to people. Then the people who go in do not come out. And I later on realized that it's no different than a cult. And this is a very controversial thing to say about Isha, but and it is still a really close place for me. But when you just be in that place, and when you have been in that zone of following the whole place for 7 years, you'll slowly realize that. And if you're not completely sucked into it, you'll slowly realize and see things that it's not just useful, but it also takes hold of you. It doesn't set you free. And a lot of volunteers do not realize this. It's as if they're doing service to the center, but what they're actually doing is they're sacrificing their own life for the ashram. And many of them, many, I have met plenty of them outside, their life has been shattered. My own career got shattered because then I didn't have any inclination to go back to my field. I even came to a point where I had decided to live in the ashram, almost did that. And fortunately, that didn't happen. But that's what the whole idea of having a group, of having a following, of having a center, of selling spirituality becomes when it's there's a propaganda behind it. It's all about making money, mostly about making money. I'm sure they do provide a lot of new experiences to people who come in, but it comes at a cost that people are not willing to see. They're not willing to see because they're so engulfed with those new spiritual experiences that they would do anything for that center. They would do anything for Sadhguru. And I have been lucky in that sense where I could see the reality in 2024. And right at that moment, I decided I'm not going to follow anybody. And I decided not to follow any practices. Decided not to follow any method. And I have been listening to Krishnamurti since 2021. And he has been against gurus. But I didn't buy that aspect of what he used to talk because I used to follow Sadhguru at that time. But once it hit me as to how prison it feels like to be in a place where it doesn't set you free but actually captures you to keep you there. That really opened up my life to ways I could not have imagined when I was following a guru. When I had a guru and I was treating him as if he's a god. He is a realized person. Whenever you just need to look at him, you just need to be around him to feel that energy that he has. Definitely, that's never a question. But but he has himself mentioned where he works at the energetic level. And when he has talked about Krishnamurti, for example, he did mention that there are very few people who would be able to grasp what he's trying to say. Who has that intellect to go deeper into it and have revelations and realizations through the intellect. Because observing the mind is not an easy thing. It's really not as easy as it sounds. It's just one word, observation. Observation. It's the most difficult thing to do. And I have been lucky and I've been blessed to have that qualities where I could slow down myself to observe the mind. And over the course of the last 5 years, I have been able to do that. And since I stopped following Sadhguru, I listened to Krishnamurti a lot. It is not that I was following it was not that I was following Krishnamurti. It was more about actually understanding what he's actually talking about. And because the baggage of following a guru, being part of such an environment of Isha, was off my shoulders, what he really said started making sense slowly. And I shifted to Sri Lanka and I lived there for 8 months. And in one of those days where I came back to listen to Krishnamurti, I listened to his The Ending of Time series with David Bohm. It just changed everything. The Ending of Time. That series is something, if one listens to it consciously, with all of their energy, of their time, and continues doing that for days, right? Continue back to back. It has the potential to lead a person to something that's going to change the entire perspective of life. Because that happened to me, and that's why I can confidently and very deeply share that it has that potential. And what Krishnamurti talks about has the potential of instantly changing a person's life, because these realizations happen instantly. And it's not any different from the day-to-day realizations that people have. For example, if a person realizes something that they're not doing right, and they it hits them that they're not doing something right, and that they're moving in a different direction. It's sort of the same realization, but in a very deeper sense, in a very deeper way about life. I've talked about this in Krishnamurti for Everybody course, and I would not go in depth here. But the whole aspect of listening to Krishnamurti opened my perspective immensely, and I owe a lot to Krishnamurti for enlightening me in a lot of ways, for allowing me to go so much deep into life that the mind can't even fathom it. It can't even put it into words. Though I've written a book, though I've been doing the courses, these words are just not enough to express what one actually goes through when there's an awakening. That beyond the sense experience, that beyond the experience realization that happens to a person. It's not something that a person does. It happens to a person, and it happened to me in Sri Lanka. And that's when everything changed for me. After that, I never really wanted to get back into the ways of how I used to do things before. And it literally shifted my perspective on people. And I could see a lot of suffering the moment a person would just walk in front of me. And the way they spoke, the things they spoke, the way they behaved, the way they sat, everything literally I could observe very naturally after that. It's not to say I have, it opens you up to a lot of seeing negativities in life. That's not the whole point. It opens me up to see things as they are, to see my parents as they are, to see myself as I am, to see the society as it is. It's only then can you see what the problems are, what traumas are, why a person is projecting onto you. It's only when you work on yourself about your own projections that you do on other people that you can see what other people are projecting onto you. It's a very classic case of mirroring, and everybody is a mirror to each other. And in this case, when it comes to love, it's beyond all this, to be very honest. It's spiritualities, and the word love itself doesn't mean much. It points to that force, that life force that exists in this universe, that exists in this world that we live in, that exists within us, which is which just has its own momentum. There's a movement in everything, there's a flow in everything. And that flow is what we as human beings should align back to. That's what the whole spiritual journey is about. It's not about sitting down for meditations, few minutes a day, few times a day. It's not about just those moments. Those moments will definitely calm you down. But after you're out of it and you're in difficult situations, what then? Meditation is something that should become a choiceless thing, 24/7. When you're sleeping or even when you're awake, it's just there because you're so deep into life, you're so conscious about life that meditation just happens. That meditation is no different from being aware of observing. It's something that keeps going on once you have a habit of it. And to each individual, it's a different journey. Person who would be believing in religions, who would be believing in God, takes it's very challenging for them to go to this side of things. And it's especially challenging if someone is following somebody, because then they look up to somebody to give answers. They look up to somebody to for enlightenment, for awakening. That's never going to happen. No matter how many processes you do, no matter how many programs you take, it will not lead you to that moment, because those are still of the mind. And to go beyond the mind is something else. To go beyond the mind and to see what the mind itself is takes a knack of seeing things within oneself, within the mind, as just being presence, as if you're just observing. within yourself, all that is going in your mind. And this I have slowly been realizing it's not easy for people to do. For some reason, it is easy for me, where I can just observe and not be affected. And I have come to a point where usually people who are not conscious, they would be like, see thoughts as something separate from them. They would be like, I am overthinking. Thoughts are happening to me. It's as if they're differentiating themselves from those thoughts. But that happens because you are looking at it as something completely different from you. That the thoughts and the mind is completely different from you as a being. You're existing as a whole being, as one. And whenever there's a separation, it's going to bring suffering. This takes depth, really deep looking to observe that anything that is viewed separately, when you look at your own thoughts as a separate entity, it's going to cause suffering. Because the truth is that everything is happening at once, and the truth is non-duality. But the illusion of life is such that there is paradox about us having to be in this physical world, us having to face this duality, and also being on the other boundary of things where you can come back and forth. It's as if you're a citizen of two worlds. You can be both at the same time and not differentiate that also. That's the beauty of spiritual journey. And not a lot of people would want to get into this kind of depth. They're happy with just doing meditations. They're happy with just coming out of their own problems. But depth is what spirituality is all about. If you don't see the truth of life, what's the point of spirituality? Truth of life is no different from truth of yourself, where it's more about just removing, just cutting down the layers of what you're not. It's a process of unbecoming whatever you're not. And then what remains in the end is life, which exists as one. So that was my spiritual journey, and I hope this connects with at least on or at some levels. And everyone's journey is different. To be honest, you can go about it anyway. It really doesn't matter who is telling you to follow what, because what you need to follow is your own curiosity, your own callings, and there is that intuition that we get, and to become aware of those intuition, to be so sensitive of those intuitions is very important, because these are like callings of the soul, which is telling you to do these things in your life, to talk to those people, to listen to this person, to just so many aspects of the mind. And it's like life is actually telling you what to do to come back to yourself, but you're not listening to it. I learned this the hard way, where I listened to the calls. It's coming from a very deep place. It's not something that the mind tells you to do. It's something that happens when there's nothing happening in the mind, and you get that urge to do something. You get that innate urge of non-compulsiveness, of a very conscious, from a very conscious place to do something. And that action is very pure. That is pure love. It's not love between two people, but purity comes from the depth of understanding life and acting through that. May you have a beautiful spiritual journey, because this life is all about coming back to yourself. No matter what you do in life, no matter who you are in life, no matter where you are in life, it's coming back to yourself. And coming back to yourself is a journey of life itself, which has taken a long journey of coming into existence and going back to what it is.